July 8th, 1497. Lisbon's harbor is alive with excitement as Vasco da Gama prepares to lead his fleet on a historic journey. 4 ships stand ready, bearing the hopes of an empire. With courage in his heart, Vasco da Gama envisions a path to the riches of India. His journey is not just one of trade, but of discovery and ambition. The fleet, carrying stone pillars known as padrones and 3 interpreters, sails into the unknown, determined to chart new routes across the globe. The members of the fleet have no idea of the adventures that lay ahead of them. After a brief stop at the Canary Islands on July 15th, the fleet continued its journey, reaching Santiago in the Cape Verde Islands on July 26th. To avoid the dangerous currents of the Gulf of Guinea, da Gama charted a bold course deep into the South Atlantic, away from familiar waters. Weeks turned into months as the fleet faced the harsh elements. Hunger and homesickness gripped the crew, but da Gama's resolve never wavered. On November 7th, the fleet reached Santa Helena Bay, but the Cape of Good Hope proved a formidable challenge. Unfavorable winds delayed their journey for weeks. The crew battled storms and towering waves, their determination tested by nature's fury. Vasco da Gama's leadership kept the fleet united, his confidence a beacon in the storm. On November 22nd, they succeeded. The Cape of Good Hope was behind them, and the promise of India lay ahead. On Christmas Day, the fleet reached the lush shores of Natal. The sailors named the land in honor of the sacred day. The crew found temporary relief, trading with locals for food and water. For a moment, the hardships of the journey seemed distant. But da Gama knew they could not linger. The journey to India demanded their resilience. On January 11th, 1498, they reached the Rio do Cobre, or Copper River, a small haven between Natal and Mozambique. Here, the Portuguese marked their discovery with a stone pillar, a symbol of their claim to new lands. By now, scurvy had taken a grim toll. Da Gama's men were weakened, but they pressed on. On January 25th, the fleet arrived at the Quelimane River. This stop brought much-needed respite and hope for the journey ahead. Vasco da Gama's navigation skills were tested as the fleet prepared to cross the Indian Ocean. The ocean was vast and unyielding, but da Gama's vision kept the crew moving forward. Though supplies were dwindling, hope began to return to the men. They knew the end was near. On April 1498, the fleet reached the bustling ports of East Africa. Here, they encountered skilled traders and heard tales of India's wealth. In Malindi, they secured a skilled pilot who would guide them across the Indian Ocean to their final destination. After months of hardship, Vasco da Gama's dream was within reach. The riches of India awaited, and Portugal's destiny as a global maritime power was sealed. After months of perilous sea travel, Vasco da Gama's fleet finally reaches the shores of Calicut, the bustling spice hub of India. The sight of the lush land brings both relief and anticipation. Da Gama stands at the helm, knowing this land holds both opportunity and danger. The promise of trade is before him, but the path ahead will be fraught with conflict. As the Portuguese sailors disembark, they are met with violent resistance. The local Malabar warriors and Arab merchants see the Portuguese as a threat to their dominance in the spice trade. A battle erupts on the shores of Calicut. The Portuguese, though outnumbered, stand their ground against the determined attackers. The Arabs, fearful of losing control of their lucrative trade routes, join forces with the Malabar locals to drive the invaders back. The attack escalates, and the situation grows increasingly tense. The Malabar warriors fight fiercely, unwilling to let the Portuguese establish a foothold in their land. Realizing the battle is not in their favor, Da Gama orders a tactical retreat, but he knows the Portuguese must show their strength to be taken seriously. After the fierce skirmish, the Portuguese take refuge aboard their ships, preparing to face further resistance. The battle may have been lost, but the war for trade had only just begun. Undeterred by the attack, Vasco da Gama orders the erection of a padrão, a stone pillar to stake Portugal's claim to the land. This act marks the Portuguese arrival and asserts their intentions in Calicut. The Malabar locals watch from the distance, unsure of the Portuguese and their growing influence. Tensions remain high, and their anger simmers under the surface. As the padrão stands tall, the Portuguese make their mark on Calicut, but the battle for dominance in the spice trade is far from over. The battle was over, but it had left its mark. The Portuguese had proven their resolve. And now the Zamarind was faced with a decision that would shape the future of Calicut. Vasco da Gama knew that this was only the beginning. The Portuguese fleet would not leave so easily, and their presence would be felt for years to come. In the heart of the Zamarind's court, the decision was not clear. Should they confront the Portuguese with violence, or allow them to stay and negotiate? The Zamarind knew that his next move would determine the fate of Calicut. The Zamarind weighed his options carefully. The Portuguese had shown they would not be easily driven away, but what would further violence bring to Calicut? After much deliberation, the Zamarind had made his decision. The Portuguese would be welcomed, but with caution. The decision had been made, and Vasco da Gama was now being summoned. Vasco da Gama, his crew behind him, made his way toward the Zamarind's palace. The weight of the past few days hung in the air, but the Portuguese were entering Calicut's heart, ready to begin a new chapter. The Zamarind's palace loomed ahead, grand and imposing. This would be the first true test of diplomacy, and both sides knew the stakes were high. The Zamarind extended his hand, a gesture rooted in both tradition and diplomacy, signaling the first step in an encounter that would change the tides of history. With dignity and grace, the Zamarind welcomed Vasco da Gama, his expression masking the thoughts of a ruler faced with the unknown. Before Vasco da Gama stepped closer, he paused, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment, a sailor on the verge of a historic meeting. Under the watchful eyes of the royal court, Vasco da Gama crossed the threshold, bringing worlds together in an encounter steeped in both opportunity and uncertainty. Inside the palace, the richness of Calicut's culture unfolded, a place where art and power intertwined, and where the Portuguese encountered a world unlike any they had known. Inside the palace, the grandeur of the Zamarind's court unfolded. A feast was laid before the Portuguese, with music and dance in the air, marking the successful arrival of the foreigners. Da Gama, though weary from the long journey, took in the sights and flavors of Calicut. aware that the true negotiations had yet to begin. Amidst the splendor of the palace, the two leaders sat across from each other, a meeting of power and ambition, each seeking to unravel the intentions of the other. The Zamarind listened intently, his expression calm yet thoughtful. A ruler with centuries of maritime history at his fingertips, he weighed Vasco da Gama's words against the legacy of his kingdom. As the conversation deepened, the Zamarind's knowledge of trade routes and his cautious curiosity shone through. Vasco da Gama, eager to secure an agreement, began to understand the depth of the Zamarind's wisdom and authority. Through the exchange of treasures, the two leaders explored not just trade, but the potential for cultural understanding, though both remained wary of what lay beneath the surface. With quills in hand, the two leaders formalized their agreement, marking the beginning of a historic partnership. For Vasco da Gama, this was a moment of triumph. For the Zamarind, a calculated step forward in global commerce. As their hands met in a formal handshake, it was more than a gesture. It was a symbol of mutual respect and a cautious optimism for the future. The air was filled with celebration as the two sides embraced the possibilities of the alliance. Yet beneath the joy, both leaders remained mindful of the challenges that lay ahead. Through the exchange of gifts, a bond of trust began to form, a bond built on the shared vision of prosperity, though shadowed by the uncertainties of competition and ambition. The Portuguese wasted no time in establishing their presence, setting up a small warehouse near the harbor, a foothold in a city renowned as a hub of global commerce. Guarded by the formidable Nair warriors, the warehouse became a symbol of both the Portuguese' ambitions and their reliance on local allies to secure their operations. The Macabari brokers, skilled negotiators, and masters of Calicut's bustling trade networks were among the first to engage with the Portuguese, drawn by the promise of new opportunities and rare goods. The exchange was more than just goods. It was a meeting of worlds, as the Portuguese sought to impress the seasoned Macabari brokers, who held the keys to Calicut's rich spice trade. Calicut's market was a hub of commerce, where the Macabari brokers played a pivotal role, guiding the Portuguese into the intricate web of trade. Yet, beneath the camaraderie lay the careful navigation of local customs and power dynamics. As Vasco da Gama stepped out of the Zamarind's palace, the weight of his mission hung heavily on his shoulders. The trade agreement marked a beginning, but he knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. For Vasco da Gama, this was not just a triumph of negotiation, but the forging of a fragile alliance, one that could open doors to fortune or lead to conflict with established powers. As Vasco da Gama gazed upon the harbor, he saw more than a bustling city. He saw a gateway to a vast and untapped world, one that promised immense wealth but demanded careful navigation of its complex politics. In the fading light of day, Vasco da Gama stood at the edge of history. The dawn of a new empire beckoned across the ocean. But the currents ahead carried not just opportunity, but the shadows of conflict yet to come.